Eamon Javers is in Washington with more details on the strike. Unknown sounds like Yogi Berra, but in this case, it was, you probably remember, it was Rumsfeld that said that, and God knows he encountered a lot of unknowns after the shock and awe that he was pushing for.
Yeah, that's right, Joe. And of course, the unknown here is what this means for U.S. policy toward Iran. Does this represent a major turning point in the U.S. approach to the Iranian problem geopolitically, or is this simply a tactical response to the situation on the ground in Baghdad? It is a huge escalation, no matter which way you look at it. We now have a new tweet just within the past 20 minutes or so from John Bolton, the former Trump national security advisor. He's left the White House, but here's what he says this morning. He says, "Congratulations to all involved in eliminating Qasem Soleimani. Long in the making, this was a decisive blow against Iran's malign Quds Force activities worldwide. Hope this is the first step to regime change in Tehran." So the question is whether this tweet from Ambassador Bolton represents the thinking of anybody still inside the administration. As you look now at the Baghdad International Airport, we don't know much about this strike specifically yet. We do know it happened nearby the airport where Qasem Soleimani was riding in a vehicle. Who is Qasem Soleimani, and why is this such a significant development? He led Iran's Quds Force. That is a special forces unit inside the Islamic Revolutionary Guard. It is an enormously politically and militarily significant force inside the region, Syria, Iraq, Iran, and elsewhere. He was, according to the United States side, actively planning attacks on U.S. diplomats and the military. He arranged recent attacks on coalition bases in Iraq. He approved attacks on the U.S. embassy in Baghdad. And, of course, U.S. forces say that he has been involved in approving attacks on Americans in Iraq for years now. The official State Department statement, the official Defense Department statement here, at the direction of the president, the U.S. military has taken decisive defensive action to protect U.S. personnel abroad by killing Qasem Soleimani, the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps Quds Force, a U.S. designated foreign terrorist organization. This strike was aimed at deterring future Iranian attack plans. Now, Joe, the question is what future Iranian attack plans will be in the wake of this strike on Soleimani by the United States side. Of course, an enormously significant figure inside Iran and its political hierarchy. The question is, how will that country now respond? What response militarily could they make? Could there be a cyber response? Could there be an economic response against oil interests in the region and the like? All of that unknown at this point. No official comment yet from the White House. We'll wait and see if the president says anything. He has been vacationing in Florida. He's expected to give a speech to evangelicals in Florida this evening. So we will see him on TV as expected sometime today. We'll see if that schedule hurries up anytime this morning.
That was interesting, the Bolton tweet, Eamon. When you said it, I go, oh, here we go. I was wondering, because we've seen some of his comments about the President Trump's handling of the North Korea situation that were critical lately, but I guess we shouldn't be surprised. He's known as one of the most hawkish members of the, even President Trump said he's ready for conflict anywhere. But I thought,
and he clashed with President Trump on a lot of that, right? Yeah, he was more hawkish than Trump. So his tweet doesn't necessarily reflect what Trump is thinking, but the question is, does it reflect what others in the administration are thinking, or has Trump come around to that way of thinking, and is that the U.S. goal here, is forcing regime change in Iran?
You probably don't follow every member of Congress, but I'll just tell you, I follow Scavino, which he handles some of President Trump's social media, what he disseminates. And I was just looking this morning on the way in, and there's probably 30 retweeted quotes from Republicans in the Senate and the House by Scavino, just with, huge backing of this. And then on the other side, you've already heard from Senator Warren, and you've heard from Vice President Biden and others. And there's like so many things, there's a bipartisan split. But if you haven't, if you don't have time to follow every single member of Congress, all you got to do is follow Scavino, and you can see all in one little collection what all the Republicans who are sort of echoing Bolton's comments that this needed to be done. And I actually saw someone else that...
if you follow Scavino, you're definitely getting what the White House wants you to read in terms of the response from Republicans.
Exactly.
This is the only thing the president has tweeted. That is
the only thing
today.
the president has tweeted, which is similar to our shot out there, Becky.
This is from last night at 9:32 p.m.
9:30, there's our American flag. And Eamon, Mayor de Blasio says we will we will harden any of the targets in New York City based on they're already thinking that that's a possibility that there could be some type of retaliation. Here we're sitting in Times Square. But
the challenge for law enforcement there is the same as it's been since 9/11, right?
Yes.
And you just can't harden everything.
No.
And so the attacker always has the advantage in a situation like that, if you're looking at a terrorist response by Iran. The question is, you know, does Iran want to respond? Clearly, you would imagine the political incentive inside Iran is to respond in some way dramatically. But do they want to respond in a way that invites an American response inside Iran, right? So there are steps to the escalation here. The United States has just escalated dramatically. Will Iran escalate dramatically, or will they continue with some of the kinds of attacks and things we've seen in the region over the past several months?
Will these be proxy attacks? Will these be cyber attacks?
Cyber attacks, proxy attacks, attacks on oil shipping in the region, that sort of thing? Or are we looking at something much more dramatic inside the United States? Right.
Well,
right.
Maybe this could,
and it's just an unknown at this point. To go back to your unknown unknowns where we started the conversation.
But this could, who knows? We'll see. We'll see whether Iran, they do, there's a lot of rhetoric, obviously. But the cover of the New York Post yesterday or the day before was that quote from Ayatollah Khamenei that the U.S. cannot do a damn thing after what we did to the embassy. And that may have, I'm not saying that pushed President Trump, but the rhetoric, you know, rhetoric matters on both sides. So we'll see what this.
And there's a lot more detail we need here, Joe, including who exactly was involved, who exactly was killed in this strike. We don't know all of the names of the people who were traveling with Soleimani who may have died in this strike, what exactly they were doing, why was he in Baghdad in the first place? Was this related to the embassy protests and attacks that we've seen in recent days, or was this something else entirely? And then, of course, we do need to hear from the President of the United States himself. What was he trying to achieve here, and what does he want Americans to be prepared for?
And there will be the fog of whenever you get a situation like this, the fog of war, because there's already spin from the administration side that this guy was in a caravan planning more attacks on Americans. That's why he was over there. They're already saying that, and that it was preempted by this. So, and
that plays into this Democratic response. You're seeing some of the Democratic politicians who are responding to this are skeptical of this, but a lot of them are leading their statements with the idea that Qasem Soleimani was a terrible person.
Right. We should have killed him, but we should have killed him, but we shouldn't have killed him. That's what I think that's what Biden said. We should have killed him, but we shouldn't have killed him.
Right. Politically, Democrats are sort of straddling this issue of this was a terrible individual who was a threat to the United States or a threat to U.S. forces in the area and had blood on his hands. But what is the next step? What are we expecting here? Why are we escalating? Where is this all leading? That's sort of seems to be the general consensus Democratic response in the first couple of hours.